Gua apa-apa dari Mas Jupri sebentar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics, held virtually by the doctoral programs in economics, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, supported by Center for Fintech and Banking, Universitas 11 Maret, in collaboration with Universitas Gajayana and Sekolah Tinggi Ilmu Ekonomi Widya Gama Lumajang. My name is Tania Sugeng, and I will be the master of ceremony of this colloquium. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable speaker, discussion, and all participants, we would like to convey to all of you participating in this colloquium a heartfelt welcome. We thank you very much for your participation in the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics. This event has more than 150 participants registered, and 80 papers will be presented, including 3 invited speakers in the session of New Star and Banking. This doctoral colloquium on business and economics is dedicated to facilitate doctoral students and other scholars to disseminate their research paper. Here we have well-reputed discussion who will criticize and provide inputs to the working paper presented in this colloquium. Before we move to the opening ceremony, for a brief moment, we would like to invite you to turn on your video and sing Indonesian anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn on your video. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable speaker, discussion, and all participants, once again, welcome to the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics. It is an honor for me to introduce and welcome the guests at our table. The Honorable, the Dean of Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, Professor Joko Suharjanto. The Head of Doctoral Programs in Economics, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, Professor Rahmawati. The Chair and Co-Chair of the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics, Professor Astri Laksmiriani and Dr. Irwan Triniboho. The Honorable Speaker, Professor Bruno Sergi from Harvard University, Professor Renata Skis for Southampton School of Business, Associate Professor Dr. Wan Aswan, University Putra Malaysia, Dr. Inka Yusgiantoro, Indonesia Financial Service Authority, and last but not least, Professor Dodi Setiawan from Universitas 11 Maret. And also to all of the honorable session discussion, presenter, and participants, We are delighted to welcome you to the second Doctoral Colloquium on Business and Economics. Moving to the next agenda, to open this colloquium, we would like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Business, Professor Joko Suharjanto, to give an opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Joko Suharjanto.
Thanks, Mbak Sania. Thank you, Prof. Rahmawati, and all speaker and discussion and all participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good morning, everybody. It's great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, to the second Doctoral Colloquium on Business and Economic. We are indeed pleased that a number of distinguished speakers as well as a scholar participate in this particular event. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I thank the doctoral program in economic of Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, for organizing this colloquium. As we know, the goal of doctoral program is to train students at advanced level in their specific field, especially through conducting high-level research. Therefore, doctoral students should disseminate their research finding in scientific forum and publish research paper in reputable journal. Publishing paper in academic journal could also be considered as extent of which the doctoral research is appreciated by the scientific community. FEB-UNS has committed to accelerate the reputation and contribution both to the academic and to the society as well, not only at the national level, but also in the regional and international environment, as we fully aware that in today's globalized world, contribution of university should be promoted to the wider spectrum. Before opening this doctoral colloquium, I want to read a wonderful pantun. Jalan-jalan pergi ke Madiun, jangan lupa beli durian. Ayo kawan ikut kolloquium bersama PDIE UNS pasti bisa. Including, I wish you very fruitful discussion and hope that you find your participant in this event good life. With kalimah Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I officially open the second doctoral colloquium on business and economic. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Professor Joko Suharjanto, the Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to listen to the welcome speech delivered by the head of the doctoral programs in economics, Professor Rahmawati. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Rahmawati.
Respectable Prof. Joko Suharjanto, MCon Honspiti, Dean FEB-UNS, all distinguished speakers, discussions, and participants of the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. We would like to convey to all of you participating in this colloquium my heartfelt welcome. First of all, on behalf of the doctoral program in economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas 11 Maret. We thank you very much for your participation in the second doctoral colloquium in business and economics. We are also grateful to all speakers and discussion for your contribution in improving the quality of this colloquium. Second, we would like to report some important parts of this event. There are more than 130 participants registered in this event, and 80 papers will be presented, including 3 invited papers in the session of New Star and Banking. This event is basically dedicated to facilitating doctoral students and other scholars to disseminate their research papers. Here we have well-reputed discussions who will criticize and provide inputs to the working papers presented in this colloquium. Third, let us briefly introduce the PDIA FEP-UNS. This program has been accredited A or Excellent by the National Accreditation Board for Higher Education. In line with the UNS and FEP's long-term vision to become a world-class university. The doctoral program has also designed a roadmap to accelerate its international reputation, including the research outputs particularly produced by the students. In concluding, let us reiterate our strong hope that this event is worthwhile for you. We also strongly expect that this forum will lead to better outcomes of this doctoral program in the future. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Rahmawati, for the welcome speech. Before moving to the next agenda, we are going to show you the video profile of the doctoral programs in Economics, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret.
The doctoral program in Economics of the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, established based on the decree of Directorate General of Higher Education number 2088-DT-2008, dated on July 7, 2008. While the academic activities began in February 2009, PDIA FEP-UNS is currently accredited with A Excellent by the National Accreditation Board for Higher Education in 2016 and valid until 2021. With a mission to be a doctoral program in economics with excellent reputation at national and international level. The doctoral program in Economics of the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, had mission to conducting high-quality education and teaching in economics, management, and accounting. They demand teachers' development and students' independence in acquiring knowledge, skills, and attitude that uphold the ethics. Conducting high-quality scientific researches in economics, management, and accounting, and disseminating the results at the national and international levels. And conducting a high-quality community service programs that dedicated for the empowerment of society, business sector, and governmental organizations. The doctoral program in economics is composed by 3 concentrations, which are accounting, management, and development economics. Therefore, the management of this program consists of program chair, 3 coordinators, and a number of support staff. All faculty members are scholarly academic, active researcher with PhD degree from reputed university abroad and domestic level. Classrooms, discussion rooms, teleconference rooms, hall with internet access in all campus area to support the academic activities and access to online academic journals and international research database. The number of the international publication of faculty members and students increases significantly over the last 5 years. Some papers are even published in very top journals in their field. For the year of 2017 until 2020, FEB UNS is granted a large grant from the European Commission for a project, Erasmus Plus Capacity Building in Higher Education project, titled Optimizing Research and Doctoral Programs in Banking and Finance in Indonesian Universities. It involves 4 European universities and 6 Indonesian universities. Some faculty members are granted with international grants and have been internationally respected as they are appointed to be managing editor, associate editor, and reviewers reputable journals. Some are also appointed to be PhD external examiners in overseas universities. This doctoral program has established mutual, especially in research and teaching or learning with reputable overseas universities. For instance,
the doctoral program in Economics of Universitas 11 Maret is accredited in excellence at the national level and is currently pushing against 21 international accreditation. Accreditation is important to ensure the quality of education that we deliver meet the national and international standard.
We are enjoying study at the doctoral program in Economics of UNS.
We are taught by high-quality faculty members with excellent research record. Program also provide many opportunities for students to have international exposure, especially related to research.
I learned a lot during my study at the doctoral program in Economics of Universitas 11 Maret, with particular emphasis on conducting high-quality research. The program also regularly invited prominent scholars from overseas universities, facilitating us to gain knowledge and skills as well as constructive inputs for our doctoral research.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the conclusion of our opening ceremony. Before I end this opening, I would like to inform you of the following matters. The first parallel session will start right after this at 9 until 10:30. To all participants, please change your Zoom name into the format your parallel room _ presenter or non-presenter _ your name. You'll be invited to join a breakout room in accordance with your research and interest. This will take a... Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the plenary session of the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics, held virtually by the doctoral programs in economics, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, and supported by Center for Fintech and Banking, Universitas 11 Maret, in collaboration with Universitas Kajayana and Sekolah Tinggi Ilmu Ekonomi Widya Gama Lumajang. Ladies and gentlemen, this plenary session will have five speakers excellent in their field. Let me give a warm regard to the honorable plenary speaker, Professor Bruno Sergi from Harvard University, USA.
Thank
Professor
you.
Renata Skis from Southampton School of Business. Associate Professor Dr. Wan Aswan from University Putra Malaysia. Dr. Inka Yuskiantoro from Indonesia Financial Service Authority. And last but not least, Professor Dodi Setiawan from Universitas 11 Maret. Thank you so much for being here. And to lead this plenary session, let me introduce the moderator for today's session, Bapak Ibrahim Fatwawijaya, or we call him Pak Boim. Hello, Pak Boim, how are you?
Hello, Mbak Sania. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's start the plenary session. To Bapak Ibrahim Fatwawijaya or Pak Boim, the time is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Sania. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to our plenary session. And we would like to extend a special welcome to our 5 great speakers, Professor Bruno Sergi, Professor Renata Skis, Associate Professor Wan Asman, Dr. Inka Yuskiantoro, and Professor Dodi Setiawan, who will be speaking later. We are so excited to have you all here to participate in our second doctoral colloquium on business and economics, organized by our faculty, Faculty of Economics and Business Universitas 11 Maret. I hope that you all enjoy the exciting speakers to come. Now for the first speaker, Professor Bruno Sergi. He is a professor of international economics at University of Messina and Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies at Harvard University. Currently, he serves as editor-in-chief on the International Journal of Trade and Global Markets, the International Journal of Economic Policy in Emerging Economies, and the International Journal of Monetary Economics and Finance. He has published many books and many articles in top international academic journals. Let's welcome him.
So, well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very delighted to be with you all today at Universitas 11 Maret online conference. And hope you are doing well. And we are living in new realities. All teaching activities, all scientific meetings are moving to remote mode. And this is quite a novelty for all of us. So this is my first conference, my second conference, international conference, that I'm doing online. It's not that easy. We lose the spirit of meeting together and discussing together in classrooms. Anyway, my speech, so I will try to keep within time limits. So I will complete my speech by 1:33 solo time. So it will be a very short introduction to COVID-19, the economic impact of COVID-19, and trade-offs. So let me be very quick about trade-offs. Trade-offs are very important in economic science, the economic field. And someone draw this trade-off between the economic costs of containing COVID with over time. And you can see on the top and of the bottom of this graph different hypotheses about the number of COVID cases with and without containment policies. Without containment policies, the number of cases would go up very quickly, and also the recession would be much less worse than the recession with the containment policies. And containment policies are becoming a very rule, especially after the Italian experience in end of February all the way up to end of April. And but this trade-off is good for us, is good for our health. But at the same time, these containment policies is having a huge impact on economic growth. You can see Barclays research, and the time that the US, the UK, Euro area countries, and Japan will take to go back to the GDP at the end of 2019. And you see that for many countries, returning to Q4 19, so end of 19 GDP, will take at least 3 years. So for example, in Italy, we are thinking about, we are expecting to go back to 2019 GDP by 2023. And this comes with unemployment. This comes with state policy, state investments. And actually, the role of the state on the bottom of this slide is a new characteristic of modern times. So a sort of Keynesian strategy, Keynesian package to help labor markets, to help the government policies to keep running. Without huge recovery packages, many governments would basically go bankruptcy. So we are in light of an unprecedented crisis, unexpected crisis, economic crisis. And this crisis is bringing up vulnerabilities, many vulnerabilities. And recovery packages are becoming now a norm in many countries. Although recovery packages, this kind of recovery packages are bringing up a new issue, the quality of short-term generosity of government. So, I mean, recovery package schemes must be taught, maybe retaught in terms of quality and much less in terms of quantity. Just to give you an idea of what is going on in Europe, the Italian debt ratio was at the end of 2019 about 134% of GDP, and by the end of 2020, the debt ratio will move up to 160%, and this is due to recovery packages on one side, but on the other side, we are creating maybe long-term instabilities to public finances. Anyway, this is another issue, but we need to keep in mind this aspect as well. And then COVID-19 is having distributional effects on income distribution And we have read on financial newspapers that the richest man, the richest person in the world got even richer. They become more wealthy in the past 3 or 4 months. And this distributional effort is another side effect of COVID-19. Anyway, the GDP was doing well to some extent before COVID-19, as you can see in this slide. Anyway, then I will send you this PPT so you can pass the PPT along to all conference participants. And so while until January 2020, expectations in terms of GDP growth were almost fine. And after February 2020, we saw very adverse expectations. And you can see the forecast about all Eastern European countries and Central European countries. And you see that the forecast for 2020 is, in terms of GDP, is very negative. And you see this line on forecast 2020, and GDP will collapse almost everywhere in Eastern Europe, and also in Western Europe will collapse. And the only good news is on consumer prices. Consumer prices are changed, so inflation is almost around 0%. It's even negative in Europe. And this will give rules for action to central bankers. And this is the forecast for the EU countries. So the EU countries will lose 8.3% in 2020, and but the growth rate will be just 5.8% in 2021. So basically, we are experiencing these new realities where a drop, a contraction in GDP will be followed by just a partial recovery, So that's why we need to move into 2022 and I believe 2023 to see our countries moving back to 2019 GDP level. So I want to speed up things in 22. So in addition to GDP collapse, we have also insolvencies, and this is the latest insolvencies projections, and we can see that things are getting bad. Business insolvencies in the US, in Brazil, and in many other countries. And that of insolvencies is an additional perspective of COVID and post-COVID strategies. And also in terms of economic forecast, a good proxy is to look at oil demand, and the consumption of oil was around 100 million barrels a day, and on the right side you see 197.5, and during the COVID-19 crisis, the demand of oil collapsed, moved down to about 80 million barrels a day, and this demand forecast will improve step by step systematically, but it will take until 2022 to converge back, to move back to 100 million barrels a day. So even on the oil demand side, we see that the recovery will move slowly, and the world economy will need maybe 8 quarters to move back to normal times. And we said about packages. So state packages, a new role for the state, a new Keynesian role of states. And we see the US, we imagine that the US, we think that the US is the most capitalist society in the world. Well, the US has a government that jump into the game, and this huge package, Tier 2, will be huge, about $2 trillion US, and this package will serve to speed up the recovery. And let me go back to this graph. We see that the US, so the US economy is the economy that will be able to move back to 2019 faster than the graph shows for UK, Euro area, and Japan. So the role of the rediscovery of states is important. I think will become more important over time, especially in light of these adverse distributional effects. So also in Europe, we saw a very strong state packages in light of very adverse data, statistical data. For example, in Germany, industrial production just in April, so at the beginning of these COVID-19 events, crashed, and also in terms of exports, Germany lost 31.1% on an annual basis. And not to think about unemployment in all OECD countries and all in advanced countries. And today, between 55 and 60 million people looking for work. So we have a long list of adverse events, adverse effects from COVID-19. So let me speed up a bit. So we have some packages. In the case of Germany, at the beginning of the crisis, up to 350 billion a year. And this is a list of what many countries in Europe have done at the beginning of the crisis with mediate fiscal impulse. So right away, what the countries have done right away at the beginning of the crisis, and also you see the federal. Also, the number is the ratio is quite relevant in terms of GDP. So the response to coronavirus the economic response of coronavirus has been quite relevant in Western Europe, but this is almost common to many other countries. And there is also uncertainty on the side of households. This is the case of China. So China is maybe one of the few countries that will be able to post a positive GDP growth. Still, more uncertainty. Uncertainty is moving up, and for example, in China, Chinese households are saving, are increasing their savings rate, and also in Italy, also in many other countries, households are saving more money in light of uncertainty. And the non-performing loans have been climbing in China. We saw also the other, let me go back to this one. So business insolvencies. Maybe this is becoming a new normal with many businesses, small and medium businesses that are going out of market due to the crisis. And then we saw oil demand as a proxy for economic growth. This is another proxy, and European flights, and basically the European flight system moved down to zero by April 2020, and this will take time. You see, January 2021, that was the estimate of April. Now the newest estimate, September 2020, so the blue line, and according to the blue line, by mid of 2021, the forecast for European flights will recover, so we'll go back to minus 50%. So if we look at the oil demand forecast, the European flights forecast, we can easily say that the recovery, a full recovery, will happen no earlier than the end of 2022. So 132, so I need to skip many slides. So this is the European package, the European Commission package with loans and grants, and all countries will be receiving some form of support, monetary support from the EU, next generation EU. And you see that the countries like Bulgaria, Croatia will receive up to 20% of their GDP from the European Union. So very, very, very strong packages. So a very, very strong support from the European Union package, the European Union side. So about the European Central Bank, also support from the European Central Bank. So the Central Bank will continue buying securities. This program has been launched on March 19th, 2020, and will continue at least by the end of 2020. But the European Central Bank President said that this will continue almost until the crisis will be over. And in terms of monetary policy, the Fed president, Jerome Powell, and the European Central Bank President, Christine Lagarde, said that we need to rethink the concept of optimal inflation rate. So in Europe, in the euro area, the optimal inflation rate is near but below 2%. This is written in the statute of the central bank. In the case of the Fed, the US Central Bank, this is not written anywhere, but the committee, the board sets its own inflation target, that is 2% anyway. And so in the US, 2% is no longer a ceiling, but a level medium. And in the case of Lagarde, she said that this pandemic is becoming, must be taken into account. And this pandemic will maybe change the direction to take in the face of public debt. So public debt will be higher, maybe forever. And so the monetary policy must be expansionary for as long as necessary to achieve their respective objectives. So I think that this pandemic will be changing the way we think about fiscal and monetary strategies. And by the way, the European Central Bank, the inflation rate in Europe is around 0, and sometimes it's negative. So plenty of rules for central bankers to print money and to support our countries, our economies. So a very quick, I'm running out of time, a very quick focus on my latest paper. So do stock markets love misery? Evidence from the COVID-19. This is work in progress. And we have used the Barrow Misery Index to study, to have insights into changes in economic well-being during the year 2020. And we saw that Barrow Misery Index adversely affects stock returns and increase market volatility. And then let me show you what we have done. So we have done an analysis of 76 different countries, and we found that an increase in Barrow Misery Index adversely affects the stock returns and increases stock volatility. And also we found that stock returns and volatility are driven by changes in real GDP and long-term interest rates instead of unemployment and inflation rates, especially for developed countries. And the findings of this work in progress paper are consistent with Barrow, and our findings indicate that the Barrow, this index represents a better measure of relative to the original misery index in predicting economic outcome, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have collected data on real GDP, growth, long-term interest rate, unemployment, inflation rate from Bloomberg terminal, the IMF website and OECD website. So this is the methodology that we have worked with to calculate the Barrow BMI level. based on Barro 1999 work. So A138, so right out of time, so I'm sorry for that. Anyway, I will send you the organizers of the conference this PPT, so you can pass along the PPT to all conference attendants. Anyway, just to wrap up what I said, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic is a very peculiar crisis because this crisis is changing the way we think about monetary policy, fiscal policy, the role of the state, the distribution of income. That is an additional aspect that we must take into account and incorporate into our analysis. So 1:40. So thank you for this invitation, and all the best to all attending PhD students. Keep in mind that I'm the editor of 3 Scopus journals. The 3 Scopus journals are associated with the conference, this conference. So please cooperate with the conference organizers in order to maybe submitting papers for consideration for publication to one of the 3 journals. So all the best to all of you. So I will stay online for a few more minutes due to my class. I'm ready to start another class at the University of Messina. So all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Professor Bruno Serchi. And also thank you for your invitation to submit the articles to your journals.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Prof. Serchi will leave us soon because he has another class. So if one of you has question, maybe you can reach him through his email, yeah, Prof. Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you.
So next up is Dr. Renata Skisis. He is an associate professor of finance at Southampton University, UK. He has research interest in energy economics, and then environmental finance, and then cryptocurrencies, and also asset pricing. He has published extensively, and his papers have appeared in many top international academic journals, such as Journal Banking and Finance, and then Energy Economics, and International Review of Financial Analysis, and many more. Please welcome Dr. Renata Skisis.
Good afternoon. I think it's good afternoon in Indonesia. And I would like to thank you for your invite to this second doctoral colloquium. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And I'm not sure that some of you might remember that 4 years ago, I visited myself Universitas Sebelas Maret, yeah. And I had a great time there. So let me start from the beginning. Yeah. So my presentation is also on the COVID-19 pandemic, and some of my aspects will echo Bruno's presentation too. My emphasis is more like on financial vulnerability of countries across the world. Yeah, so the title is The Quest for Multidimensional Financial Immunity to the COVID-19 Pandemic, and that's evidence from the national stock markets. Now, unfortunately, I also have a class, so my presentation will have to be shorter. So the outline is as follows. So first, I will introduce you to the topic. Second, I will quickly describe the data. Then I will outline the methodology, and I then present my empirical findings. So this is my ongoing research, and the paper is currently under review in Journal of the National Financial Markets, Institutions and Money, right? And the working paper is available on SSRN. Well, unfortunately, I forgot to put on the web address, but I'm sure you can Google it. Right. So why this topic is important? Well, so first of all, so as Bruno also said, so the COVID-19 outbreak itself led to unprecedented economic and financial downturn, not witnessed for decades since the Great Depression. It can be illustrated by the scale of the collapse of the price of global equities. They collapsed by 20% only in the first quarter of 2020. Right, but that collapse did not come evenly to different countries. So some countries like Argentina, Brazil, and South Africa recorded losses of around 40%, whereas some other countries like China, Denmark, and Switzerland only lost 10% of the overall equity value. So the question that we ask in this research is what drives the view of resiliency or vulnerability to the pandemic? So that's the simple question that we ask. Now, having asked this, so we can look at existing research, right? And existing, so it's fast-growing, emerging research on the effects of pandemic, right? So this research emphasizes the type of operating activity, the financial situation, international exposure, environmental and social factors, ownership structure, and it's quite bizarre aspect is that even wrong companies' names, such as Corona, can influence, on your financial performance. And however, we know that research at the country level is next to non-existent, and our research tries to fill in this gap. Right, so what we do here, we come up with different categories of potential determinants of their vulnerabilities. So we distinguish among financial, economic, healthcare infrastructure, government interventions, and also governance and national culture, right? So obviously everybody will agree that financial discipline and performance is very important, for companies and countries. Those actually perform better than others are likely to be more financially resilient to the COVID-19 outbreaks. So we use different correlates related to profitability, indebtedness, investment activity, and valuation ratios, as well as indices structure of the stock market. For instance, it is quite obvious that if in the market share, there's a big weight allocated to travel and leisure industries, so that market is likely to collapse more than other markets with a lower share, just because of national travel restrictions across the globe. And those restrictions have hit severely this industry. But also, what we hypothesize is that industry concentration may be very important because countries with activities concentrated in a few industries are likely to be more vulnerable to the pandemic. In our research, we also account for different investment styles. So for that purpose, we use variables such as momentum, market value, long-run reversal, liquidity beta, local interest rate, and idiosyncratic volatility. Now, we also use economic determinants. So that's a broad list related to economy, demography, and technology. So obviously, financial vulnerability depends, on how economy grew before the pandemic crisis, what stance of the business cycle it was, and how fast it develops. Yeah, it also depends, how the economy it is exposed to the global economy in terms of the ratio of exports of goods and service GDP, the national tourism receipts, and the ratio of trade to GDP, because relatively more open economies are expected to be hit harder by the pandemic than relatively closed economies. Now, everybody will also agree that demography is also important, because countries with aging populations, stock markets likely to be hit more by the pandemic. And also, migration patterns can facilitate the spread of COVID-19. Another subcategory is technological development. So the more technologically advanced countries can better monitor the evolution of the pandemic, and identify the sources of contagion and quickly deliver information to the public, so that public can take actually precautions against the pandemic. And therefore, in terms of the stock market response, so that response may not be as big as without technological development. Now, the quality of healthcare provision here, so that's quite obvious. So countries with more developed healthcare system may be better equipped to combat the pandemic, which eventually is also reflected in the stock market. So we come up with 7 categories, subcategories of the quality of healthcare provision. So the expenditure, infrastructure, population health, healthcare access and quality index, service coverage index. Then we'll also add lower respiratory infection score and smoking prevalence among adult males and females, because research shows that smoking doesn't help to patients with COVID-19. And also COVID-19 affects lower and upper respiratory tracts of your body. We also add government interventions. So how government across the globe responded to COVID-19. So we classify these interventions into 3 groups following Hale and others in 2020. So these subcategories are containment and closure, health system, and economic stimulus. Right, so obviously how successful government interventions are, it's also reflected in the stock markets. And finally, we look at the national culture and governance, because in our view, they can be instrumental in government's ability to implement successfully different policies to combat the spread of COVID-19 and also revive the economy, right? And so we follow the literature which use indicators of overall governance quality, state power, and freedom of expression, as well as national culture. Okay, so we use data for 67 countries. As you can see, Indonesia is also on this list, right? And so the period, sample period that we use is from 1st of January 2020 to 28th of April 2020. So that is for the stock market data and also for government interventions. Now, for all the other variables, we use the time invariant data for 2019, so the pre-existing state of that data. And so we ask, how that affects resilience. We use both daily and weekly data for stock returns and for government interventions, and we use time invariant data for economic, financial, healthcare, and governance. Right, so as in terms of the methodology, because our research deals with a multidimensional information set, which has not been used before to study financial immunities. So we proceed in 3 steps. So what we do first, we interact the rate of growth of total number of confirmed cases with financial, economic, healthcare, government interventions, and governance variables. Yeah. So we use this single interaction panel data regression, where the coefficient beta shows, how stock market responds to changes in the economic, financial, healthcare, government interventions, and governance culture when you take one by one basis, right? Now in step number 2, we use a machine learning methodology, which is elastic net. Elastic net is the combination of lasso and rich regression to find out whether the statistically significant covariates identified in step 1 are also those that maximize the out of sample adjusted R squared. Yeah, so in other words, we ask, whether it helps us to identify a subset of economically significant covariates, right? So, and then in step number 3, those individually significant covariates, so from statistical and economic significance, sense are included in the multiple interaction regression. So these are included in the vector of explanatory variables x, 2, I, t, yeah, and this vector gamma 2 quantifies the effects of those interactions. Okay, so and so looking at the empirical findings, yeah, we can see that, so we start from the very beginning. So these scatter diagrams indicate, yeah, negative relation between the growth of COVID-19 confirmed cases and stock market returns, right? And so then we ask, yeah, is this negative relation driven by economic, financial, healthcare, or government interventions or governance data, right? So I only show the findings in the 3rd step. So basically where those asterisks are, so we can see that the confirmed cases lead to a decrease in stock market returns in international stock markets. We also find that those countries which experience fast growth of assets, AG, they actually, the stock markets responded negatively in those countries. Now, let me perhaps go to my verbal explanation. So empirical findings indicate that conservative investment policies in terms of lower asset growth and low valuation of expected profits appear to be more resilient to COVID-19 pandemics. We also find that from economic factors, countries with lower unemployment levels are better placed to cope with the pandemic because actually the social issues that they encounter are lower. And in terms of government interventions, how they responded to pandemics, so we find that the government stringency index, which combines all those interventions, has a positive effect on the stock market, which means that the government interventions actually can help to avert the adverse impact of the pandemic and on the stock market. And then we also run several robustness checks. Yeah, so we use a growth rate of cumulative number of confirmed death as the first robustness check. We use a two-stage least squares panel data regression to deal with potential endogeneity. Yeah, and we run also the fact analysis. Yeah, and essentially all these robustness checks confirm the main result that countries where investment policies are more conservative, yeah, countries with low unemployment levels, yeah, and countries with more stringent response to COVID-19, actually the stock market response was more resilient. So that's about it, yeah. And thank you very much for your attention. Now, unfortunately, I have to very quickly to switch to another meeting because now it's about time, yeah. So thank you very much for your attention, yeah. And thank you for the invite. Yeah, now if you would like to have presentation slides, I will be happy to share those slides with you. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Renata Kisis. And unfortunately, Dr. Kisis needs to leave us soon because he has another agenda. For those who want to read his working paper, maybe you can find his working paper in the SSRN online journal. And would that be okay if one of the participants maybe want to contact you, ask you about the empirical research, Prof?
Yeah, that's all right. Yes, that's all right.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Dr. Wan Asman. Is joining us from Malaysia. He is an associate professor of economics at the University Putra Malaysia. He is also head of Department of Economics at University Putra Malaysia. His main research interests lie within the domain of applied macroeconomics, especially financial economics and international finance. He has published extensively, and his articles have been appeared in many top-tier journals, such as Journal Banking and Finance, Economic Letters, Economic Modeling, and many more. Let us welcome him. Dr. Asman, could you please to unmute? Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Ibrahim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Universitas 11 Maret, for inviting me, especially Dr. Irwan, actually, who contacted me, to share, some of my research work, with doctoral students in Indonesia. So my research is not related to COVID, because the first two speakers talk about COVID. So I'm going to talk about the impact of FDI on economic growth and the role of language, right? So we want to see on how English language proficiency will alter or will change the impact of FDI on economic growth. But let me start with some backgrounds about our studies. This is a work in progress that I work, with one of my PhD students, right? As I said earlier, the main focus or the main objective, of this research is to test the impact of FDI on economic growth by focusing on the role of human capital, in terms of English language proficiency, right, on the impact of FDI on economic growth. I think we are aware that many countries, actually, especially the developing countries, they rely a lot on foreign direct investments as a source of foreign capitals, right? Foreign direct investments by multinational corporations, they invest a lot of money on R&D and they hire many professional and also technical workers for the corporations, for the companies. And they invest a lot of money on trainings, right? So FDI by multinational corporations is always linked to superior or new or advanced technology, right? So once MNC they establish their local subsidiary, for example, Malaysia or Indonesia, right? Some of the knowledge, some of the technology that they own, right, will spill over to local firms. So I give you an example in the case of Malaysia. I'm not sure whether you are aware about the paint, right? The paint company from Japan, ICI, and also PAR. So we have that in Malaysia, and now we have two local companies, right? Which is known as Colorland and also MCI. So the owner of these two companies used to work for PAR and also ICI, right? So they work for MNC, and then they get all the new technology, the knowledge, right? They go for all the trainings, and then eventually they left the foreign company, they established their own company. So now we have local paint company, right? Which use technology developed by Japanese company, right? So because of that expectations, because FDI may bring a lot of benefit to local economy and many economy, especially the developing countries, they remove restrictions on free flow of FDI because they want to attract more FDI. So I give you some number here, some information that I take from United Nations. So as you can see, this is the changes in investment policy by many countries from 1991 to 2016. So you can see that, right? On average, there are 57 countries who actually change the investment policy, right? So on average, there are 112. Over this year, over this period, there are 112 changes in investment policy. And then if we break down the changes in investment policy into promotion, restrictions, and neutral, then we can see that 92 cases, right, out of 112 cases, right, the changes is made, right, in order to attract more FDI. So about 82% of the changes in investment policy was directed to create environments which is friendly for foreign investors. So all countries that are competing in order to get foreign direct investments from MNC. And this is some of the data of FDI flows for both developing and developed countries. This is for the sample 1970, 2017. So as you can see that in both countries, in both groups, investments or foreign direct investments has increased over the years, right? So the orange color is for developing country, the blue color is for developed countries, okay? Right? In both groups, they are increasing. But if you observe closely, then you're gonna see that the amount or the proportions of FDIs that goes into developing country, right, is getting bigger, right? So the gap is getting more, is getting bigger, bigger and bigger. So more and more FDI is going to developing countries, right? So they are competing in order to get FDI. So because of theoretical predictions that FDI is good for local economy, there are a lot of studies which tested the impact of FDI on economic growth. But overall, I would say that the findings, right, is inconclusive, because some they find that the impact is positive, some find that the impact is negative. Right, but in some of the cases, they don't find any impact of FDI on economic growth. Right, so what is the reasons behind these mixed findings or weak link between FDI and economic growth? And one of the possible reasons given in the literature is that, because most of them, they fail to account the impact of conditional impact of FDI, right? So many economists believe that the impact of FDI on local economy is not direct, right? But the impact depends on other factors in the economy. And there are several factors which has been highlighted in the literature, such as financial markets, right? By Alfaro, and also my papers in, I think this one in Economic Letters, I think, right? In 2010, because we argue that in order to benefit from FDI, local firms, they must have access to external finance, bank loans. So for countries, because technology is very expensive, so if countries, they have, developed, financial system, banking systems, right? So in that countries, firm has, access to finance, and then they are able to buy or adopt new technology in order to bring positive impact on the economy. Right, and also by Borenstein, for example, on the role of human capital, because they believe that in order to benefit from FDI, right, local workers, they must be able to work and deal with new technology. So the gap must be small between local economy and also MNC, or foreign direct investments. If the gap is too big, and then probably local people is not able to work with new technology. Durham, for example, proposed on the role of institutions. We must have good institutions in order to benefit from FDI inflows. And again, my papers in economic modeling. So I propose that in order to benefit from FDI inflows, we have to have freedom. In terms of economic activities. So we don't have a lot of restrictions. We have labor movement flexibility. For example, from one company to another company, in order to benefit from FDI inflows. Right. So related to the paper that I'm working now, I think it is closely related to the idea proposed by Borenstein on the role of human capitals. So we need to have good quality workers in order to work with new technology. And in this paper, I argue that English language proficiency is an important element of good human capital. Right, so I'm going to give the reasons later on why I believe that English language proficiency is important preconditions for positive FDI spillovers. Right, so this is the reasons. First is because English is the main language for science and technology. Right, so many conferences around the world, regardless of where they are organized, right, most of them gonna use English as a medium of communications. Right. So second reason, if you check the number of papers which is indexed in Scopus, right, because journal is a platform which is used for us to disseminate our research finding. Right, the new technology, new knowledge can be published in journals, for example. Right, so 80% of journals which is indexed in Scopus are written in English. Right, if we observe closely, right, many multinational corporations which invest, which bring FDI, they use English as an official corporate language. Right, so we have Nestle, for example, in Indonesia. We have Sony, for example, in Indonesia. You have Toyota in Indonesia, right? For example, you have we have factory here. They have operations here, right? So through foreign direct investments, so most of them they use English as a medium of communications, because according to these authors, O and Selmio, they found that English language has a lower transaction and also communication costs, okay, as compared to other, major languages, okay, such as Spanish, okay, French, and so on, right? And a recent paper, okay, by Trans, okay, for example, in Harvard Business Review, so this guy, okay, this author, okay, shows that, okay, country with higher English proficiency, okay, they are more innovative. So they plot, okay, the scatter plot, this simple analysis, the simple correlations, okay, they shows that, right, English language proficiency, okay, is positively correlated, okay, with innovations. Okay? So this country, okay, they are more innovative. They have more researchers and technicians, right, divided, okay, by number of populations. And also, okay, these countries, okay, they spend a lot, okay, as compared to others, okay, on research and developments. Right, so this is the model, okay, that I'm going to use, okay, to test the impact of FDI, okay, on economic growth, depending, okay, on the level of English proficiency. So I'm going to use threshold regressions, threshold model. Okay, I'm going to split, okay, the coefficients, okay, into two. So I have two equations here. This is the baseline equations, right? So this is the equations, okay, that you normally see, okay, in linear model, right, which is used, okay, to test the impact of FDI, okay, on economic growth. Right, this is growth of GDP per capita. This is initial, which is initial income, which is used, okay, to capture convergence effect, okay, as proposed, okay, by Solo-Swan model. So this is FDI. So this is the main variable. This is vector of control variables, right? Other variables, okay, that we think will influence growth. Okay, but the problem here, okay, we have too many variables, okay, which can explain growth, right? So we gotta use the variables, right? We have to minimize, okay, the variables. Okay, we cannot take all the, there are 60 variables, okay, which influence growth. So we are guided, okay, by papers, okay, in FDI and economic growth, okay, for example, by Alfaro, for example. So we're gonna use, we're gonna choose a few independent variables instead of, many variables. Right, so this is a linear model. This is the growth model, which is transformed into threshold form. Right, so this threshold model, right, this is growth. Now, the coefficients that you see earlier, right, is split into two, right? So the first row, right, is the coefficients on all independent variables if English proficiency is less than gamma, right? What is gamma? Gamma is the threshold value, okay, that we are going to estimate later, right? So gamma is the splitting points, okay, between, countries, okay, with low English proficiency and countries, okay, with high English proficiency. Okay, we're going to test this later, right? So second row, right, is the coefficients for countries, right, with, right, English proficiency, okay, which is more than gamma. Right, so we are going to estimate these equations, okay, by conditional OLS, right, by using dummies, to split the coefficients, okay, into two. Okay, one is for, coefficients, okay, if English proficiency, okay, is less than gamma. Another set is for coefficients, okay, if, English proficiency, okay, is more than gamma hat, right? But we need to estimate this. Right, so English language proficiency, okay, we're going to use TOEFL score. This is an online test, and the skill is between 0 and 120. Right, so we can get this skill from TOEFL website. This is for 61 developing countries, and the sample period skill from 1976 to 2015. Right, so this is the linear, okay, this is a simple one. This is ordinary least square. So we estimate, right, the impact of FDI on economic growth plus, some other, independent variables, okay, control variables. So we have population growth, okay, we have, investment ratio, okay, which is a proxy for, investment, okay, in physical capital. We have life expectancy, right, which is a proxy for human capital, different aspect of human capital, right? We also have inflations, right? So if you look at the coefficients for this simple model, right, they are in line with theoretical predictions. Initial income is negative, which is predicted by a theoretical model. Population growth is also negative, which is also significant. Investment ratio, right, which is investments in physical capital. As you invest more in physical capital, right, you're going to have more output growth, right? Life expectancy, human capital is also positive. So if you increase human capital, and then economy will grow further. Inflation is negative, the impact in the economy. If you have more inflation, so real GDP growth will be declining, is getting smaller. Right, so our focus is here, right? The impact of FDI. So you look at these coefficients, the impact, right? The coefficient is positive, but statistically it is not significant. So it means that there is no impact of FDI, right? There is no direct impact of FDI on economic growth. Now we turn to our main analysis. This is threshold model. In threshold model, we have two steps. So in the first step, we have to compute, as I said earlier, right? The gamma hat, the gamma in the equations, equation number 2, we have to estimate. Now this is the estimated gamma, right? This is gamma hat, right? And then once we get this gamma hat, we need to test whether this gamma hat is statistically significant or not. So to test this, we use bootstrapping, because this is a non-standard inference, because gamma is not identified under the null. Under the null, we don't have gamma, right? So we need to use bootstrapping. So for bootstrapping, we set the trimming percentage to be 15%. So you need to set the trimming percentage, and then you need to set the number of bootstrap replications. So in this example, I set 5,000 for replications, and then trimming percentage is 15%. Now, based on the p-value, and then we found that there is because p-value is less than 5, so it means that there is threshold effect in the length between FDI and economic growth, right? So now you can split. So in the second step, so we need to run the second equations that I shared with you earlier, right? Through conditional least square and using this gamma hat, right? So we impose in the second equations that gamma hat is equal to 76.75, and then we estimate equation number 2 by conditional least square. Right, so this is another way, actually, to test the conditional impact. So second presenter earlier, Prof. Renatas from Southampton, he used interaction model, right? I can also use interaction models to test the conditional impact, but instead of using conditional model, so I use threshold. So there are many ways, actually, to test conditional impact. Right, indirect impact of FDI on economic growth. Right, so looking at this example, right, results, I just want to focus on FDI. Right, so now you can see that this is the coefficients for FDI if, right, English proficiency is less than 76, which means that low level of English proficiency. So the coefficients is positive, but not significant. But if the level of English proficiency is high, which is more than 76, then you can see that the impact of FDI on economic growth is positive and significant. So this suggests that the impact of FDI on economic growth depends on the level of English proficiency. If you have a worker with high level of English proficiency, right, the chances is high for your countries in order to benefit from FDI inflows. Okay, if the level of proficiency is lower, less than 75, for example, right? So that, you know, there is no impact of FDI, okay, on local economy. Right, and then okay, I do some robustness check. So first check, okay, I split further, right? In the first step, okay, we have two regimes, okay, low regimes, high regimes, right? Less than 76, more than 76. Now, okay, I split further, okay, the low regimes into two subgroups, right? So I test, okay, for the p-value. So it turned out that there is no threshold effect for the low regime, right? And then again, okay, I test, okay, for high regime, high English proficiency, right? So I was thinking about multiple threshold points in the relations between FDI and economic growth. So based on this analysis, so the p-value in both cases is more than 5%. So it means that, right, there is only one threshold in the relations between FDI and economic growth. Okay, there is no multiple threshold. Okay, there is only one threshold, and the threshold is earlier, you know, 76, the level of English proficiencies. And then, as I said earlier, the p-value, okay, that I compute, okay, is based on 15% trimming percentage and also 5,000 replications, right? So I set different numbers, okay, for bootstraps and also trimming percentage, and recomputes, right, the p-values, okay, for different combinations of trimming percentage and also bootstrap replications, number of iterations in bootstrapping. So I choose, you know, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. So trimming percentage, okay, starts with 10%, 15, 20, 25, and 30. So I rerun, okay, the model and recompute, okay, the p-value. So you can see that, okay, for all combinations, okay, you can see that, right, they are less than 5%. So if they are less than 5%, so it means that, you know, this is robust, right? So the value that we get here, right, is robust to different combinations of trimming percentage and also number of iterations in the bootstrapping.
Sorry, Dr. Warasman. I think we have a limited time, so you have three minutes left, I think. Thank you very much. Sorry for interrupting you.
Last one, okay, I include developed countries. Okay, some of the developed countries, okay, who the native language is not English. So I rerun the model, and again, okay, you can see that, okay, there is threshold effect when the, you know, the English proficiency is less, right? There's no effect. But if the English proficiency is high, so there is positive impact. Right, so the last one, last slide, is less than 3 minutes. Right, so basically, okay, based on the results, okay, as I said earlier, okay, this is work in progress. So I'm still improving this, you know, because the results, okay, that you have seen earlier, okay, it was a cross-sectional analysis. So I'm going to use a panel after this, panel threshold. And I'm going to use, you know, different indicators, different proxies, okay, for English proficiency, because there are websites, okay, which publish, you know, the index, okay, the new index, okay, for English proficiency. So in conclusions, okay, we can see that, okay, there is no direct impact, okay, of FDI, okay, on economic growth, okay, but the impact, okay, depends on the quality of the workforce. I mean, in terms of English language proficiency. So the government, the policymaker, okay, they have, you know, to think, okay, not only about, you know, on how to attract, okay, FDI, because, okay, they give a lot of incentive, okay, they have, you know, financial incentive, okay, they have, you know, tax incentive, fiscal incentive in order to attract FDI, right? But they also need to think about, you know, the quality of workers in local economy. Okay, they have to upgrade, okay, the quality of human capital, I mean, in terms of English proficiencies. I think that's all, you know, my research. Okay, as I said earlier, okay, I cannot stay in these, you know, sessions. Okay, I have a meeting to attend. So if you have anything to ask, okay, you can email me. I'm also the, you know, one of the associate editor, okay, for International Journal of Economics and Management. I think that journal is listed under one of the platforms for students to publish. If you have a good paper, if you want to submit to iGEM, if you want to consider iGEM, you can email me. Right, thank you, Pak Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asman, for your presentation, and thank you also for your invitation to submit our papers to one of your journal. And next up, Dr. Inka Yusgiantoro from Indonesia Financial Service Authority is joining us from Jakarta. Apa kabar, Pak Inka?
Good, I'm good, thank you.
Semoga sehat dan sukses selalu, Pak Inka. Dr. Inka Yusgiantoro is the Executive Director, Head of the Department of Research in Financial Service Sector, Indonesia Financial Service Authority, or OJK. He was a research fellow at John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. He has research interests in macroeconomics, finance, and also risk management. He has also published articles in top-tier journals such as International Economics and Research in International Business and Finance. Let us welcome him.
Okay, am I audible and can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be part of this webinar. And first, I would like to thank Professor Ramawati, Professor Asri, Professor Joko, and my good friend, Dr. Irwan, for inviting me to this event. And last week when I was being asked to join this, I'm debating what to present in this event. I was going to present some of the research work that we've done at OJK, but then I realized that I think everyone can just read the working papers in our website. We have a special work site for our research work that we have done in the past 3 years, in which we established this new department, research department. And so today, what I'm going to share is just one research work that we are currently doing. I and my 2 other colleagues are doing in our research department. And this is a work in progress, just like the research in the previous speaker. So we are free to get some feedback from everyone to improve on this research. So basically, what we are trying to ask is how effective is the policy that we have been implementing, the countercyclical policy, particularly that we have implemented since March of this year due to risks that we are facing from this pandemic. So let me bring everyone back to revisiting the credit crunch theory. Here I showed 3 quotes, basically from 2 papers that deals with credit crunch theory. On the left and the middle part is taken from Bernanke's paper from Brookings Institution back in 1991, when he and his co-author tried to describe the recession conditions back in the US in mid-90s, where banks were reluctant to lend to the real sector. And this was in fact partly due to the tightening of the federal budget at the time, and this also the current account deficit widening, and particularly a shortage of the capital that have limited the banks to do the loans, to distribute loans to the real sector. So in short, I think this credit crunch, some people would probably also call it capital crunch, because that's where the bottleneck or the constraint has originated. And on the right side here is a paper done by Bidi and Liao in the Journal of Accounting and Economics, where they also refer to the credit crunch theory and that how the bank lending is sensitive to regulatory capital during recessions and after the recessions. So this is something that I think we can relate to, particularly for those majority of us here in the audience are Indonesians, where we are now after I think going through 9 months now, where we're not yet confirmed of the third quarter GDP figure, but it seems that it might be mostly in the negative territory. So we are trying to hover or maintain our stability, particularly in the financial sector. So this kind of study may help to push further the intermediation activities from the bank side. So let me give you a quick background. I think maybe for some colleagues too who are not Indonesians. So basically in March 2020, in third week of March, OJK has proactively issued counter-cyclical financial policy to support the government's National Economic Recovery Program. Actually, the government's National Economic Recovery Program was implemented or was issued on March 31st, whereas our regulations was issued a week and a half before that. So it was an initiative that we did before the government set out the program. But both policies work hand in hand and to support the real sector. And from our side, it's basically making sure that credits are still available to all the MSMEs and also to the big corporations. So, and we are talking here in particular to our banking regulations, POJK number 11 in 2020, regarding the national economic stimulus as a counter-cyclical policy on the impact of the spread of the coronavirus disease. The regulation itself pretty much has two main concerns, main issues. One is on the relaxations of the loan quality assessments into one pillar. Here we typically have three pillars, according to the timeliness of the payments, to the bank's condition, and also to the macro conditions or external conditions. But here we combine all, and just to make sure that people are still able to meet the credit quality, we relaxed it to just one pillar for timeliness of the credit. And the second issue is to basically restructure the loans, restructure the banking loans for everyone, including also the micro, small, medium enterprises. And we allow this relaxations from March 2020 and goes on until for 1 year until March 2021. So this study will provide some picture of what's next, what's going to happen next, whether this regulation has been effective for the banking industry as well as for the economic sectors. In addition to our regulations, the government has also implemented their own stimulus program. And the way they do is to place funds in the state-owned banks and also regional development banks. And they have done that since June and July of this year. In June, they put out about, I think, let me see, about 30 trillion rupiah in state-owned banks in Buku 3 and Buku 4. And then later on in July, they place additional funds in 7 regional development banks. And I think they are planning to expand the number of regional development banks for this placement of their funds. Yeah. Of course, it's not a free money. I think the government charge in the beginning. I think they charged about 3.4 interest on these funds, additional funds. But then I think they lowered it to 2.8% on these funds. Yeah. So this research has three objectives. The first is to evaluate the impact of our countercyclical policy on loan restructuring, yeah, on the banking industry, and we are distinguishing it based on buku category. For those who are not Indonesians, we are here in Indonesia. Banks, commercial banks are divided up by their capital into four: buku 1, 2, 3, 4. Buku 4 is the largest banks with above 30 trillion capital. And then we also base it on ownerships, whether it's state-owned private banks or regional state banks. And we also distinguish it by the bank's risk profile. And we have three different risks in terms of credit risk, solvability risk, and also liquidity risk, and also by economic sectors. And then the second objective is to look at the government's stimulus program on the funds placement, whether it's effective or not for the banks. And finally, the final objective is to evaluate the impact on one of the particular policy in our POJK 11/2020, and that is on the determination of the loan quality based only on the timeliness of the loan payments. So here we look at the data on the restructured loan growth for our banking industry. On the left side here, we see that yes, after our regulations in third week of March we issued in 3rd of March. We see that mostly all the banks have restructured their loans, particularly the big banks, the biggest banks, and that is buku 4. If that's the yellow line, you can see how it rapidly, are doing the restructuring. But then later on, yeah, buku 3, came to do significant restructuring when the rest followed through. And I think, but since then, since its peak in 2nd quarter of this year, it subsided into the 3rd quarter, and I think we are expecting more to be back to normal. So we could say that we are in the recovery phase now. Of course, this is also given that the health crisis, particularly the vaccines are in line to be produced. So on the right side here is by in terms of economic sectors. I think there's more variations in the sectors. There are more restructures that was done by several sectors, particularly in agriculture and large trading sectors. So the data we use I think latest here we have 108 commercial banks. This monthly data from January 2019 to August 2020. We do panel data with all sample banks and also by sample groups based on what I mentioned earlier on the bank groups by buku and ownership, and also by risk profile in terms of credit risk, solvency risk, and liquidity risk. And also by economic sectors. Here we divide up into 12 sectors when they all made up 93% of the total loans. So let me jump into our results. Because of the limited times, we have 5 models, and each model has several simulations, several estimations. But for this first model, it's just one estimations, and we use a full sample here. So the model here, on the top here, you can see that it's indicator here. We use various banking indicators here as on the top of the tables here. And here we got alpha 1 as the constant plus POJK res. This is actually a dummy variable for banks before and after the implementation of our POJK, of our regulations in March. So before March is 0, after March is 1. And then we have the loan total assets and also macro indicators. Macro indicators here is to capture maybe some some effects from external conditions. Here we use CPI and producers managers index, and then we have the error term. So we run this, and we have this preliminary results, and it reveals that as expected, the restructured ratio, these are the number of restructured loans over total loans, have significant value and is positive after the implementation of the regulations. And also it gives a positive loan growth, which is good. This indicates that the regulations works, that it gives flexibility for the banks to remain providing loans to the real sector. The second model, we try to distinguish the banks in terms of the credit risk. Here, the credit risk, I think we put threshold at above 5% for the gross NPL. Gross NPL is collectibility of 3, 4, and 5. So the formulations is similar. So the indicators here, we have various banking indicators for the dependent variable. And then POJK RES is also the dummy variable before and after the implementation of the regulations. Risk here is credit risk. Yeah, this is for those banks with NPL above 5% and below 5% for gross NPL. And this, we have interactions for those banks with high credit risk and implementation of the regulations. And then we also have the total assets and also the macro indicators. So we run the estimations, and we find that the countercyclical policy has a positive and significant association with banks' loan loss provisions. So this shows that basically for banks with high credit risk, they will tend to increase their loan loss provisions, and thereby maybe reducing their capitals, which may be not a good indications for stability in the futures. So later on, I think in our conclusions, we will show that we can extend our policy, but maybe bank specific for bank specifics, in which banks with lower credit risk rating. So that was on credit risk. Now on solvency risk, we distinguish the banks according to threshold of 11.5% for CAR, for capital adequacy ratio. I think we use that due to say it's 9% for, we use second tier bank quality plus 2.5% capital adequacy. No, sorry, capital conservation buffer from Basel III. So that threshold can be altered or changed depending on how we want to see it. But for this study, we use 11.5%. So for those below 11.5% CAR, we deem those banks to be at solvency risk. So we run the data, and we obtain some indications that the countercyclical policy has a negative and significant impact with loan growth, so which is not good, and also for CAR, that it will reduce CAR and also loan growth. But although they show some profitability in terms of the positive sign in NIM. So after solvency risk, we also try to distinguish it in liquidity risk. We distinguish this for banks with higher than 100% LDR. At first, we wanted to use LCR, but since some of the data and the implementation of LCR is not all being executed in all banks, so we use LDR to represent liquidity risk. And then we also did a separate run for the interactions or the correlations between liquidity and LCR, and they tend to be negatively related. So I think it's we see that LDR is sufficient to be used to measure the liquidity risk here. And so we ran the model, and we got the negative and significant associations in terms of loan growth. So this will lead us to our conclusions that for banks with high liquidity risk may not be good to implement, further relaxations on the restructuring program. Next, this is on the economic sectors for Model 3. The model is very similar. Here we estimate again the dummy variable POJK-RES, the total assets and macro indicators. And here we put the plus sign for those sectors that have a positive and significant association with the intermediation indicators. And here we see that the construction, trade, and hospitality sectors have positive loan growth from the countercyclical policy that we implemented since March 2020. And note for this data, we use only credit under 10 billion rupiah. So this is credit for the UMKM, for the MSMEs. Others for manufacturing and trade are also positive for their NPL ratios, and for restructured ratios, the quantity of restructured loans over total loans are also positive for some sectors. So for Model 4, we run several simulations, several estimations. The first here is just using a full sample. PEN here is the government program for placing their funds in the state-owned banks and also regional banks. And here we see that the government stimulus program indicate positive and significant relationship with loan growth. So overall, we can conclude that the program, the placement of funds, the government's placement of funds in those banks, have really helped the banks to be more liquid and to provide loans to the real sector. And of course, I think this is in line also with the increase of the loan loss provisions. When you have more loans, I think the banks tend to also set aside more loan loss provisions for those credits given out. But we are not satisfied. We try to run further estimations because we want to see whether these banks that have received the government's funds, if that's across the board, they are affected by the funds, or is it only for the big banks, not for regional banks? Because as we know, the government has placed funds in both the 4 state-owned banks that we have at the moment, and 3 are in Buku 4 in the largest banking groups, and 1 is actually in Buku 3, and then the others are BPD, the development banks, regional development banks. They are across in Buku 3 and Buku 2. So we want to differentiate that. So we try to run an estimation on this is only for the Buku 4 for the largest banks between the private banks and the state-owned banks, which we distinguish in our interactions here on variable on PEN and bank. And here we find out that the loan growth is positive and significant. So later on, we will show you that actually for the regional development banks, it's not significant. So here actually the driver of the loan growth comes from the state-owned big banks, not from the regional banks, and by way of the government putting additional funds in the banks. So, but then this is against, there's a negative side to this, is that the profitability of the banks and the return on assets has a negative impact on this program. This is for Buku 4 state-owned banks that we distinguish. The next is for Buku 3 state-owned banks. This is a mix of the state-owned banks and also the regional development banks. And it shows also positive loan growth too, I think, and this comes more from the state-owned, the one state-owned banks in Buku 3, although it comes at the cost of lower capital adequacy ratio. Next is this only for the seven regional development banks that we do. And here, as you can see, the loan growth has no significancy, has no significant values, while the loan loss provisions show some significant value, positive significant value, and also with the number of restructured loans as expected.
Dr. Inka, sorry for interrupting you because we have limited time. So maybe
I have 3 more slides probably. So this is the last model. Okay, this is the last model. I'll be quick. This is the last model. We want to also see how the impact of the government, of our OJK's particular program for determining the quality assessment of the credit into one pillar. And here it seems to us that actually for since March, it doesn't have any real impact yet. I think it's more on the restructuring loan side that has an impact to loan growth and to other banking indicators. But for this, we don't seem to have any impact yet. Maybe later on, I think the banks may, after they restructure their loans, maybe I think this second half of the regulations of the policy may be beneficial to the banks. So this is my last slide. Just to summarize, basically, just looking at the data empirically, we show that our policy, particularly the POJK 11/2020, is effective enough to increase the number of restructured loans and maintain loan growth. Yeah. So the findings also reveal that the policy can be extended after March 2021, but perhaps for specific groups of banks that have relatively lower credit risk, solvency risk, and liquidity risk. From the sector perspective, there are several sectors that have proven to be beneficial from this policy, while others, did not show any significant results. The government's stimulus policy on the placement of funds in state-owned banks and regional development banks have also shown positive associations with the loan growth and restructured loans. And finally, the specific policy on determinations of the loan quality based on timeliness on payments, it so far has not shown any significant associations with performing non-restructured loans. So that's all I have for my presentations. Please let me know if you have any questions and or if there's any way that maybe we can improve on this on progress research that we are doing at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Inka, for sharing your empirical research. So let us keep the question and answer session at the end of the plenary session. However, for participants, you can start to send your question through the chat box. Maybe we can select 1 or 2 questions. The last but not least is Professor Dodi Setiawan. Professor Dodi is a professor of accounting, financial accounting at Fakultas Ekonomi and Bisnis Universitas 11 Maret. He is also appointed as the head of Center for Research and Community Service of this faculty. His papers has been featured in Global Finance Journal, Journal of Asia Business Studies, and many more. Let us welcome Professor Dodi. Thank you. Professor Dodi, could you please to unmute your microphone?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm very delighted to be part of this webinar. The first 4 presenters is very brilliant. They provide discussion on COVID and also macroeconomics. And I will be the last presenter today, and inshallah I will provide a new angle of discussion. I will discuss regarding the accounting. So here is our paper. Also, as Pak Boy mentioned that we already running out of time, I will do my best to speed up my presentation. I have 30 pages slides, so I will try to finish within 10 minutes. And then we can discuss more in the Q&A session. Basically, this our research discussed on CEO turnover and earnings management in Indonesia, the role of family ownership. The authors are myself, Dodi Setiawan, and also both my supervisors in University Science Malaysia, Dian Kipua and Hong Kok Chi. The main idea is what happened during the CEO turnover process. There are two events here, departing CEO and incoming CEO. Departing CEO has the incentive to manage earning upwardly to achieve higher earning in the final year of his term. It is believed that the departing CEO will attempt to maximize their earnings in the final year in order to avoid termination, get higher bonus, and demonstrate his capability. This comes from Ronan and Yari. As you're aware that they try to give a good impression to others. However, on the other side, the incoming CEO has the incentive to manage earnings in the succeeding year and the subsequent years. In the year of change, the incoming CEO will try to take birth on the first set of final statement, right of onward operation and unprofitable division, in order to report poorer firm performance, so he can blame the former CEO for his unfavorable past performance and set a lower benchmark for himself in the coming year. It's like in the last year of the departing CEO, they try to increase, and then next in the successive years, they try to decrease. Again, it is expected in the first year of full time of the incoming CEO, they try to manage earning increasingly. So this is the main idea of this paper. This is the main idea of this paper. And then as we know that the earnings management itself can be divided into two actions. One, accrual earnings management, as we know from the Jones, modified Jones, Kasnik, and also the real earnings management. They divide three real earnings management: production costs, discretionary expense, and cash flow from operation. So what kind of earnings management will do by the CEO turnover, incoming and departing CEO? And also, the other idea is how the effect of the family ownership in this CEO turnover events. That's the main idea of this paper. So here our research problem. The current study investigate the effect of CEO turnover and earnings management and the role of family ownership on the relationship between CEO turnover and earnings management. For the family ownership, we divide our sample into first. It's not CEO duality, but family duality. We believe that when the CEO and chairman of the board come from the same family, we call it the family duality. This term we refer from previous work by Pak Agung Prabowo and John Simpsons. They argue that there's a family duality here. It's not CEO duality in Indonesia because Indonesia have two separate board of director and board of commissioner. So there's different people there. But if the CEO and chairman of the board come from the same family, we believe that will be the family duality. And also we try to the effect of the family commissionership and family directorship, and also multiple commissionership in this family ownership matters. That's the main idea. And here the example of the CEO turnover in Indonesia in case of Waskita Karya. The CEO try to boost their earning, so they will get a bonus. And after the CEO turnover, the incoming CEO found that the departing CEO makes some things not really good. They say that they manipulate earning. So this is so that the CEO try to investigate earning for their own interest. That's so. This paper expect that departing CEO, will manage earnings increasingly through accrual earnings management and real earnings management first. And second, we expect that the incoming CEO, will downward earnings management in the succession year. Yeah, that will be the big bad theory. And then next, in the first year in the full year of his term, they will manage earning increasingly. That's the main idea. That's the main hypothesis of this paper. Yeah. So, but the problem was our paper here. We try to get the family ownership. We do it manually, handpick data from everywhere. We try data. This data went all in 2003 until 2010. Yeah. Here our research method. Yeah. 2003 and 2010, and we use 3 methods for the accrual earnings management: Jones, modified Jones, Kasnick. We try to search the best earnings management method for accrual earnings management in case of Indonesia. Yeah. Also, we use real earnings management developed by Roy Choudhury. Yeah. Okay. We use dummy variable for the family ownership. Here, our board of commissioner, family duality, family representativeness in board of commissioner, multiple commissionership, yeah, and also family involvement on the board of director. And we have 5 control variable in this study: yeah, auditor, firm size, growth, institutional ownership, and leverage. Okay. Here our models, yeah, earnings management as the independent variable, and also CO turnover, and then it's T-1, and then T0 and T+1, and then also independent variable, yeah, and put for interacting variable, and also for the control variable. Here the statistic descriptive, yeah, we have okay, here our data. Hypothesis testing here. We found that for accrual earnings management, yeah, in the T1, it's positively. So departing CEO try to increase earnings management. So this result, yeah, confirm our expectation that in the last year of his term, departing CEO try to increase earning through accrual earnings management, also for the production costs and cash flow from operations. Yeah, that's the main idea. And for the others, family ownership, we found that family commissionership and family commissionership have direct effect on accrual earnings management. Yeah. Next, we skip to the incoming CEO. Yeah. For incoming CEO, we expect that there will be downward earnings management in the succession years. Here, our result confirm this expectation. There is negative earnings management, accrual earnings management, yeah, in the succession years, and also significant real earnings management in production costs, discretionary expense, and cash flow from operations. Yeah. And last, for the 1 year after succession year, we found that CEO do not use accrual earnings management to manage earning, but they use real earnings management to manage earning upwardly. Because accrual earnings management is not significant, but for the real earnings management, there is significant in production costs and also in discretionary expense. So, however, for the family, the role of family, here we found that family commissionership have negative effect on accrual earnings management, yeah, and family directorship also have positive effect on RAM, earnings management. Yeah, that's the main theme, the main result of this study. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to skip presentations in Pak Boim always send me. Okay, Pak Dodi, we have a running out of time. Okay, basically, our research confirmed the expectation that there is a big bet during the succession CEO. The departing CEO increasing their earnings to get higher earnings. So they will get more bonus. Yeah, they will get good impression to others. However, for the incoming CEO, they will use big bad hypothesis. They try to minimize earning in the year of succession. Yeah, and then next year they will try to increase earnings management. I think that's all, Pak Boim. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Dodi, for your interesting empirical research. So we are now in the question and answer session. Currently we have one question for Dr. Inka from Axel Susanto, Faculty of Economic and Business. He asks you, I am very curious with what foreign banks in Indonesia are doing in this situation and how they are doing so far in this condition. Do they also have a privilege to be helped by the authority, or they only rely on their parents' bank at home country? Thank you. Dr. Inka, could you please to unmute your microphone?
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. It's an interesting questions. To answer that, no. The government for the government stimulus program, they only place funds in state-owned banks and regional development banks. So not in private banks or even foreign banks. So yes, they do have to rely on their on their parent companies or their parent banks overseas or their capital in domestic operations. So, yeah, here in our study we don't specify on foreign banks because they are not the target banks that we want to study. So we focus more on state-owned banks and regional development banks. So that's my answer.
Thank you very much, Pak Inka, for your answer. Apparently, we're running out of time. So we are going to move to the next session. So thank you for everyone for joining our plenary session, and special thanks to our speakers, Dr. Inka and Professor Dodi Setiawan. Thank you. Now back to you, Mbak Sania.
Thank you so much, Bapak Ibrahim Fatwawijaya, Pak Boim, for leading this session. And of course, to all the amazing speakers, thank you for your insights. Before we end this plenary session, let me invite you to take a virtual photo shoot. Everyone, please turn on your camera and say hey. Everyone, please turn on your camera. Okay, I think that's enough. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mbak Sania.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Ibrahim, Mbak Sania, thank you ya, Pak Dodi.
Terima kasih Pak Inka, terima kasih. Semoga bisa bertemu langsung nanti Pak Inka.
Ya.
Semuanya online. Soim semoga sukses loh ya.
Ya.
Amin.
Oke. Izin lift ya.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will start the third file session right after this at 3:30. Please change your Zoom name into the format your rooms _ presenter or non-presenter _ your name. Good afternoon and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have now arrived at the last session of today's colloquium, the second doctoral colloquium on business and economics. Welcome to the last session, best paper and best rising star announcement. The Honorable the Dean of Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, Professor Joko Suharjanto, the head of the doctoral programs in Economics, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret, Professor Rahmawati, the chair and co-chair of the second doctoral colloquium on Business and Economics, Professor Asri Laksmiriani and Dr. Irwan Trinugroho. Once again, welcome to the last session of the second doctoral colloquium on Business and Economics, Best Paper and Best Rising Star announcement. Before we announce the winner, let me give a brief conclusion of today's event. All the papers have already been presented. There are 80 papers in total with 80 presenters and 150 participants joining this colloquium. So congratulations to all presenters for successfully present their paper. The second, the plenary session were held successfully with 5 excellent speakers in their field. So everyone, ladies and gentlemen, honorable speaker, discussion, and all participants, thank you so much for your enthusiasm, participation, and of course, thank you for your knowledge and insight in this colloquium. For the last agenda today, we are now going to announce the best paper and the best rising star. The best paper categories will be announced by Professor Rahmawati as the head of the doctoral programs in Economics, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas 11 Maret. So, Professor Rahmawati, the time is yours to announce the winner.
Good night, participants. I will give information about page paper number 1 and number 4, and then number 4. Page paper number 4. Okay, the title criticism on triple bottom line and the perspective of green swans by Elvia Ifada. By Elvia Ifada, Universitas 11 Maret, Jakarta. Best paper number 4. Yeah. And best paper number 3, efficiency and competition in smooth banking sector by Nur Syazrin Murtasya, University Malaysia Sarawak, and Rosa Jana Abraham, University Malaysia Sarawak. Best paper number 2, Google Trends and Depositors Behavior by Nugroho Saputro, Universitas 11 Maret, Yosia Christian Mahulete, Universitas 11 Maret, Putra Pamungkas, Universitas 11 Maret, Herman Sahirudin, Indonesia Deposit Insurance Corporation, and Irwan Trinugroho, Universitas 11 Maret. And best paper number 1. The title revisited the concept of sharing economy, success and bring of values, review of truck sharing economy based implementation in Indonesian trucking companies by Batara Parada Siahaan dari from ITB, Togar Mangihut Simatupang from ITB, and Lian Okdinawati from ITB. Thank you very much for all participants. Good night. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Rahmawati, for the announcement. And congratulations for the best papers category winner. The next category is the best rising star, and it will be announced by Dr. Irwan Trinugroho. Dr. Irwan Trinugroho, the time is yours to announce the winner.
Thank you, Sania. So my job is to announce the best star in banking. This special season is supported by the Center for Fintech and Banking. So the best star in banking goes to Dr. Fakaruddin Kamaruddin from University Putra Malaysia with the paper title Impact of Country Governance and Banks Profitability, a Productivity Nexus, Empirical from Islamic and Conventional Banks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Irwan Tinugroho, for the announcement. Once again, congratulations for all the winners of the best paper categories and the best star. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, this is the end of today's colloquium, the second colloquium on business and economics. Thank you to the doctoral programs of economics for such an amazing colloquium. Thank you to the Faculty of Economics and Business, and thank you to the Center for Fintech and Banking. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, honorable speaker, discussion, and all participants, thank you so much for your enthusiasm, participation, and of course, thank you so much for your knowledge and insight in this colloquium. Let's meet again in the next colloquium. Thank you, good evening, and have a good day.